The following contest, scheduled for one fall, is for the World Wrestling Federation Championship.
On April 16th, 2020, it was announced that Howard Finkel had passed away. Known as the Fink during his long tenure with World Wrestling Entertainment, Howard was widely known as the WWF's greatest ever ring announcer, his voice becoming synonymous with the WWE over multiple eras and generations. The loss of Howard Finkel also brings the loss of one of wrestling's true cornerstones. A real part of the wrestling business that we grew up with is now taken away. The sound of superstars getting their name announced in that distinctive Howard Finkel manner, and his booming voice as new champions were crowned. The passing of Howard Finkel means the WWE has now lost its voice. So let's pay tribute to the great Howard Finkel and take a look back at some of his most memorable moments in the WWF. Hailing from New Jersey, Howard participated in public address announcing in high school, and afterwards he went to a broadcasting school. When he made his way to Vince McMahon Sr.'s WWWF in the 70s though, he wasn't used as a ring announcer right away. Instead, he and Vince McMahon Jr. were in charge of soliciting organisations and arenas to run live events, pretty much a sales job where he would try to get more business for the WWWF through already established companies and venues. Through this line of work, the Fink was able to demonstrate his ability to sell people on a product, a key trait that would help him land the role of ring announcer. Vince Jr. learned of Howard's education in broadcasting, and it was he who convinced Vince Sr. to give the Fink an opportunity to announce in the ring. The Fink then would make his ring announcing debut in Madison Square Garden in January of 1977. 3 years later, Howard Finkel became the very first official employee of the WWE. His name is on WWE books as employee number 1, meaning he had been the longest lasting employee up until his passing. A truly remarkable distinction though, and one that Howard seemed to carry with honour. Howard Finkel then became the voice of the WWF in Madison Square Garden, and soon his voice was used to open up WWF TV shows and programming. You'll probably hear this a few times over the course of this video, but Howard's voice just matched what the WWF was doing at the time. The guy was small in structure, but his voice had an incredible amount of impact. He really did help bring a soundtrack to WWF wrestling. As many of you know if you attend a live event, the ring announcer is your host for the evening. When watching shows on TV, you have the announcer, the commentators, the hosts, the interviewers. There's a lot of staff there that drive the narrative forward of any given TV show. But at a live event or a house show, the ring announcer is doing all of these jobs and more, even keeping time during matches, giving instructions to referees from the back. There's so much going on here that a ring announcer has to think of, and Howard Finkel done an incredible job of not only welcoming audiences to matches and letting us know the participants and winners, but actually keeping the show moving forward. Justin Roberts, another talented ring announcer, talks a lot about ring announcers' jobs at house shows in his book, and it really is worth a read. It will give you some real insight on just how many tasks were sometimes piled upon these guys. Someone tweeted a story not too long ago, I think it may have been Lance Storm, about Howard having to also timekeep during a house show, and to make things believable, he would stand up and go to ring the bell after false finishes and close kickouts. Fink knew what the finish of the matches were, but he would still act out like he didn't know what was going to happen, and keep in mind, people's eyes were on the match and not the timekeeper, but he wanted everything to look as believable as possible. Howard became the voice of the WWF then, and he was right there when the wrestling boom of the 80s started. And in the 80s, we had the debut of WrestleMania. Did you know that the Fink was the one who came up with the name WrestleMania? Howard said in an interview back in 2017. Back in 1984, there were many meetings going on to try and get the ship that we were painting launched. With the visions of Vince McMahon, we were going to try and establish ourselves not only as a sport, but as entertainment as well. So a meeting was held to cross the T's and dot the I's. When it came time to come up with a name, what could we call this event? This meeting was in 1984, so I said 20 years ago 4 guys from Liverpool came across the shores to the United States and made a phenomenal impression on everybody. They called that Beatlemania. I said, there was Beatlemania, why can't there be WrestleMania? We all know how important WrestleMania is, it goes without saying. The name of the legendary event though, all credit goes to the Fink for that one. With WrestleMania and the WWF in itself now becoming a global powerhouse, the Fink became even more important to wrestling as a whole. His announcements of wrestlers would now become even more distinctive, and to highlight how he would have unique calls for each wrestler, wrestling fans around the world would copy his style of saying wrestlers' names while watching on TV or playing with their action figures. This then would be a good time to talk about some of my personal favourite Howard Finkel wrestler introductions. Howard's Ultimate Warrior introduction always stands out to me. His announcement of The Undertaker was one that my dad, of all people, used to copy a lot during entrances. I feel his Randy Savage announcement was always memorable. One that I think doesn't get enough love was his Razor Ramon ring announcement. But my absolute favourite out of all the superstars he introduced was Bret Hart. It's just how he emphasises the word Hitman, how it isn't Bret the Hitman Hart, but Bret Hitman Hart. Howard's Bret Hart introduction just goes along with the whole Bret Hart entrance so well. I can't help but hear Howard saying, from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, anytime I hear Bret Hart's theme music. Of course, we can't talk about Howard's mic work without mentioning his trademark call. Whenever we had a title change, Howard would always say, the winner of the match and new WWF Champion or IC Champion or whatever it was. Not only was this a Howard Finkel signature announcement, but it became a WWF signature announcement. Have a listen. Howard's announcement that we had a new champion made the title change feel so much bigger. People would pop when he said the word new. It was fantastic. He really did put his own stamp on huge moments that made these moments feel monumental. Honestly, I can't imagine how many people across the world had popped for wrestlers winning championships to the sound of Howard Finkel's trademark and new WWF Champion announcement. It's as legendary as the man himself. And then there was those moments where we waited for Howard to make an announcement after a match because we just didn't know what had happened or who the winner was. During strange finishes or matches that ended in a draw, the audience in attendance and the viewers at home would wait and wait for Howard Finkel to let us know what the official ruling of the match was. Again, to use Bret Hart as an example, when the 60-minute Iron Man match at WrestleMania ended with no scores recorded for both Bret and Shawn, we had to wait for Gorilla Monsoon to tell the Fink what would happen next, and who could forget Howard breaking the news that the match had been ordered to continue
under sudden death rules.
For the uninitiated, the Fink also had the job of letting us know the rules of a match, whether the following contest was scheduled for one fall, or if the only way to win the match was to escape the cage with both feet touching the floor. Howard would also tell us the rules of the Royal Rumble match every year, becoming a Royal Rumble tradition that greatly hyped the annual match each and every year. There were also a few times when the Fink ventured away from the microphone and got himself involved in a few storylines. Mr. Perfect was able to beat the Texas Tornado for the IC title back in 1990 thanks to the Fink accepting a bribe from Ted DiBiase. DiBiase became the guest ring announcer that evening, and the $1 Million Man used this as an opportunity to hit Kerry Von Erich with the championship belt, helping Mr. Perfect to win the match. Many people remember Howard feuding with Harvey Whippleman, a feud that went on for quite a few years, leading to Kamala attacking the Fink and Harvey Whippleman making fun of the Fink's toupee at WrestleMania 10. When Howard pushed Whippleman to the ground in retaliation, the Madison Square Garden audience popped with excitement. Later in 1994 though, Howard Finkel became an honorary bushwhacker for their match against Well Done on Raw, giving us another much loved Fink memory. The Whippleman vs Fink feud culminated on the January 9th, 1995 episode of WWF Raw. Howard defeated Whippleman in a tuxedo match on this evening. Howard also became involved in a few storylines during the Attitude Era. Most will remember his work with X-Pac and later Chris Jericho. In 1998, Jeff Jarrett berated Howard Finkel by shaving his head, which, to be fair, was already pretty bald anyway. This led to Jeff Jarrett facing X-Pac at Summerslam 1998 in a hair versus hair match, and the Fink was in X-Pac's corner for the match. Seeing the Fink come out to the ring with a DX shirt on and doing the infamous DX crotch chop was really a sight to behold. And after X-Pac won the match, Howard seemed to take great pleasure helping Jeff Jarrett get a new haircut. I'm not so sure if injecting the Fink into these storylines was a way of ribbing him, but he definitely looked like he was having fun on TV screens. The Jericho angle though had a little more to it, with Jericho encouraging the Fink to attack Tony Chimel during the pilot episode of WWF SmackDown. Howard did indeed run to the ring and shove Tony out of the way, leading to Tony throwing the Fink out of the ring. The Fink then would become Y2J's lackey, helping Y2J in his feud with Ken Shamrock, only for Jericho to hand Howard Finkel over to Curtis Hughes. Curtis only went and gambled the Fink away in a poker game with the Acolytes. By the time the year 2000 had arrived, Howard was working a lighter schedule and announcing duties were handed over to Lillian Garcia and Tony Chimel. We could still see him on pay-per-views, but as the years went on, the Fink was moved to a more backstage role where his encyclopedic knowledge of pro wrestling was put to good use. He did get involved in another brief storyline with Lillian Garcia this time regarding the lead announcer job. This led to another tuxedo match. Fink's on-screen appearances became more sporadic as the years went on, however. Howard would also contribute quite a bit to the WWE's website as the years progressed, as his announcing duties took a back seat. His wrestling-based trivia quiz, Outthink the Fink, became a mildly popular pastime for fans of the WWE. Howard Finkel then would be used for special occasions more than anything else. He made a return to Madison Square Garden at the 2011 Survivor Series when CM Punk selected him as his own personal ring announcer, seeing as Punk's opponent, Alberto Del Rio, had been using Ricardo Rodriguez as his ring announcer. The Fink got a little teary-eyed during this gig at the Survivor Series and his timing was a little off, but it looked like he really enjoyed himself being back here in Madison Square Garden. CM Punk even bantered with him a little after the announcement, but it was all good. From here, the Fink could be found on the April 10th, 2012 episode of SmackDown, the special Blast from the Past episode, and Howard was also used as a special ring announcer on the 1000th episode of Raw. This brings us then to Legends House, one of the first WWE Network TV shows that featured a bunch of wrestling legends living under one roof. A sort of reality show here that had good points along with bad. Howard was featured on this show and I'm going to admit there were times when I felt pretty bad for the Fink. There were moments when he felt like an outsider in the house, and more than once, Howard got a little upset during the recording of the television show. The final episode of Legends House, though, featured all the legends together having dinner and reminiscing not only about their time in the house, but their lives in general. During this dinner, Howard Finkel said to the other housemates, "As far as my life is concerned, I had a very tough upbringing. I was picked on and I was really, truly bullied, and it got to me big time. The greatest thing that ever happened to me was success. I proved every motherfucker wrong, and I am proud as for doing that. I became a somebody from a nobody. I wasn't part of the in crowd, and I felt it through the form of verbal bullying, but through hard work, through sweat, through tears, I went out there and done the very best I could, and I'm now a legend." Legends House isn't normally something I'd enjoy watching as a wrestling fan. The whole reality-based programming thing around the world of the WWE can be hit or miss, but the Fink's nature as a human being was on full display here for all to see. The guy was quite timid but extremely proud of his professional accomplishments. If you want more insight into who the Fink truly was, Legends House is a good place to start. Anyway, Fink was still being used at WrestleMania shows, however he was not there at WrestleMania 33. Howard's final big announcement came at the 25th anniversary of Monday Night Raw on January 22nd, 2018. Howard's voiceover was used to introduce The Undertaker, as he could not attend the show due to being unwell.
Coming down the aisle, The Undertaker!
I think what drew us to Howard Finkel was the innocence the man had in a world that was filled with over-the-top wrestlers beating each other up in the middle of a wrestling ring. Howard came across as a welcoming man, a humble individual who probably took his fair share of ribbing backstage, but he never let it waver him. Howard's contributions, though, in the world of wrestling are now immortalised. All those classic WrestleManias, all those title changes, the moments in wrestling that get replayed over and over again, Howard Finkel's voice is the soundtrack to those very moments. The WWE Network's back catalogue of pay-per-views, the very shows we grew up with, and the matches that I cover on this channel, Howard Finkel's voice was always there to make the matches and moments feel bigger, to add his signature stamp on new champions, to make the audience roar in approval over match outcomes. In 2020, when looking back at the history of wrestling, the word legend can get overused, and it can be bestowed on those who maybe done things in a less favourable manner. But if you think of the matches Howard announced and those title wins that he wrapped with a bow, how he would be the official final word after the bell had rung for years upon years, Howard Finkel no doubt deserves to be called a legend. I'll leave you with this picture that Tommy Dreamer posted on his Twitter page. Tommy said that Howard didn't want any recent photos of him shared online as he didn't want fans knowing he was sick, but Tommy shared a few after Howard passed away. This one here shows us Tommy and Howard in what looks like a care home or hospital, and if you look closely at the notice board on the wall, Howard had left a note asking staff to turn the TV over to channel 43 on Monday nights so he could watch WWE Raw, proving that Howard remained a fan of pro wrestling just like all of us right up until the very end. Sometimes in wrestling, when someone passes away, other people involved in the business are quick to forget about their colleagues and the show carries on as usual. When it was announced that Howard Finkel passed away, however, countless superstars and peers expressed what Howard Finkel meant to them through social media posts and YouTube video posts, a shining example of how much Howard Finkel was loved by people in the business. Guys like myself who post videos on YouTube and who are not directly involved in the wrestling business though, most of us grew up as fans, and we grew up watching Howard do his job without knowing who the man was personally. As fans, we loved the Fink for his work, but Howard's peers talk consistently about the Fink being a sweet and humble man, ready to listen and talk to anyone who approached him. That innocence and kindness that radiated from Howard onto our TV screens, from all accounts online, from Howard's colleagues, that was all very real. He was as likeable as his on-screen presence tended to show. Me, nor anyone else making videos like this, can talk about Howard behind the scenes because we just didn't know him that well, so to hear these kind of things from his peers is really heartwarming. The WWE then, on April 16th, 2020, amidst a ton of turmoil within the company, not only lost something that gave the organisation its identity, but more so, we all lost something that made old school wrestling really special. As mentioned earlier, we have the WWE Network and countless ring announcements from the Fink to look back on, and he left his mark in the world of professional wrestling, so Howard can rest easy knowing he is everything he said he was in Legends House. Howard Finkel indeed will be remembered as a legend of the WWE. Again, I, nor anyone else making these kind of videos, knew Howard Finkel on a personal level, but we did know him as the greatest ring announcer in the history of professional wrestling, who made our favourite moments in wrestling even more monumental with his signature voice. So with that, I say thank you, Howard Finkel.